Um, these men establish the uh, version of masculinity which young men now, your age, I'm now thinking about the men in this class, are basically up against. That is, you're being measured up against that particular version of masculinity from basically between 1960 to say 2000, as opposed to when I was growing up, I was being measured against the wartime generation, and what they considered to be tough was like they would say to us, "That's not tough." Like you think that's a tough time. It's not a tough time. We're like, okay. We went through a depression. We went through the war. What are you complaining about now? Like, okay, okay, yeah, no, we're not complaining. So I'm sure you've heard this kind of thing before. It's like, oh, that's not really tough. It's like, yeah, yeah, okay. Everybody's inherits and has to deal with and struggle with the definition of masculinity, femininity, gender, a whole bunch of different definitions which are laid down on us by the culture and by our families and expectations, cultural expectations, which are then expressed through advertising and all the other media that we see around us. And so the British men who arrive in the prisoner of war camp, have been there basically all along when the Americans arrive, are perfect. Like this is what men should look like. And they were adored, says Vonnegut, by the Germans, who thought they were exactly what Englishmen ought to be like. They made war look stylish and reasonable and fun on 94. And again, this is the kind of thing which you'll see, ironically, in Tarantino films. And you see it in the one about the Inglorious Bastards, misspelled, right? Where the Michael Fassbender character is this same sort of, he's going to have a good drink because he knows they're all going to be killed, and they are. It's a very interesting, it's a typical Tarantino scene where they're all going to be killed in a few minutes. The picture of both Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt and masculinity in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is very much a love letter to that particular moment of masculinity, which essentially is the inheritance from this kind of masculinity. And this is what Vonnegut is talking about. The concept of war as fun is something which I certainly was taught. We played war. If you're a video gamer, most likely you have at least one war-based game where basically playing war is a way to relax. I mean, yeah, you get all wound up and you play, and you basically you expend a lot of you have a good run and so on. If we ever went out to this was not something that was something to be ashamed of. We were socialized to do this. It was the way to be, and I suspect it still is. I don't see people saying. I mean, I see people saying, video games are damaging or bad news or for various reasons, but the gaming empire is now so vast and it's worth so much money that it's not in the interests of anybody really to pay attention to people who are saying, we really shouldn't be probably playing at killing people so much. And with his usual irony, Vonnegut sets up Billy. And Billy, is, as I say, this victim. So here's Billy, who has survived this miserable, sort of one, hole in a one in a game of golf kind of thing at the 18th hole. And he survived it. And then here's Robert, his son, right? And Billy's son, Robert, this is on pages 24 to 25, had a lot of trouble in high school. But then he joined the famous Green Berets. He straightened out, became a fine young man, and he fought in Vietnam. 24 to 25. So it's like perfect. That's it. Like within one sentence, Vonnegut straightens them out. It's like that's it. He joined the famous Green Berets, and the Green Berets at this time were new. This is something that was the Green Berets were established by Kennedy because Kennedy loved the special forces, and he was upset that the Americans didn't have special forces. He's like, well, I don't. We have special forces. The Brits do. They've got James Bond, and he loved James Bond novels. So he's like, we should have special forces. Kennedy actually had been in the Navy, right? He was a lieutenant on the PT boat, PT 109, I think it was. These are little little torpedo boats, very very vulnerable, and it sank. It got sunk. I mean, he survived it, but I think he floated in the ocean for like a day before they got picked up. But yeah, I mean that's why the generation that gave birth to the men who went to Vietnam were in World War II, and they just brought with them this war mentality, which was gender. War made us men. Okay, so Robert joins the Green Berets. He straightened out to become a fine young man and went to fight in Vietnam, which goes against everything that we saw last week and the week before that, right, with O'Brien and then with Platoon. And Vonnegut keeps a perfectly straight face when he delivers this punchline. I mean, you sort of, as with most Vonnegut, you're like, ugh. You're like, you don't know what to do. Like, you sort of, like, slap your head and forehead in aggravation, laugh, do both, And Vonnegut seeks out militarism, and he has very interesting comments about it. So on page 11, he says, the nicest veterans in Schenectady, so this is New York State, a town in New York State, I thought the kindest and funniest ones, the ones who hated the war the most, were the ones who'd really fought, on page 11. And so this is the struggle that we have here, is that the men who've gone to war generally, especially men who served near or at the front, are not fond of it. But the generals, many of them love it. And Patton, famous tank general, armor general from World War II, said, God help me, I love war. God help me, but I love it.